20. The others slept heavily through the rest of the night. I was in and out, dozing, waking, dozing again. The night was far from silent. I heard the triumphant screech-squawk of a pouncing owl, the tiny cry of some small animal, perhaps about to be eaten, a larger something blundering wildly through the undergrowth. Under all of this, a steady tone, were the crickets. There were no more screams. I dozed and woke and dozed, and I suppose if I had been discovered standing such a slipshod watch in Lidio, I probably would have been court-martialed and shot. I snapped more solidly out of my last doze, and became aware that something was different. It took a moment or two to figure it out. Although the moon was down, I could see my hands resting on my jeans. My watch said 5:15. It was dawn. I stood, hearing my spine crackle, walked 24 feet away from the lumped-together bodies of my friends, and pissed into a clump of sumac. I was starting to shake the night willies. I could feel them sliding away. It was a fine feeling. I scrambled up the cinders to the railroad tracks and sat on one of the rails, idly chucking cinders between my feet, in no hurry to wake the others. At that precise moment, the new day felt too good to share. Morning came on apace. The noise of the crickets began to drop, and the shadows under the trees and bushes evaporated like puddles after a shower. The air had that peculiar lack of taste that presages the latest hot day in a famous series of hot days. Birds that had maybe cowered all night just as we had done now began to twitter self-importantly. A wren landed on top of the deadfall from which we had taken our firewood, preened itself, and then flew off. I don't know how long I sat there on the rail, watching the purple steal out of the sky as noiselessly as it had stolen in the evening before. Long enough for my butt to start complaining, anyway. I was about to get up when I looked to my right and saw a deer standing in the railroad bed not 10 yards from me. My heart went up into my throat so high that I think I could have put my hand in my mouth and touched it. My stomach and genitals filled with a hot, dry excitement. I didn't move. I couldn't have moved if I'd wanted to. Her eyes weren't brown, but a dark, dusty black, the kind of velvet you see backgrounding jewelry displays. Her small ears were scuffed suede. She looked serenely at me, head slightly lowered in what I took for curiosity, seeing a kid with his hair in a sleep scarecrow of whorls and many-tined cowlicks, wearing jeans with cuffs and a brown khaki shirt with elbows mended, and the collar turned up in the hoodie tradition of the day. What I was seeing was some sort of gift, something given with a carelessness that was appalling. We looked at each other for a long time. I think it was a long time. Then she turned and walked off to the other side of the tracks, white bobtail flipping insouciantly. She found grass and began to crop. I couldn't believe it. She had begun to crop. She didn't look back at me, and didn't need to. I was frozen solid. Then the rails started to thrum under my ass, and bare seconds later the doe's head came up, cocked back toward Castle Rock. She stood there, her branch black nose working on the air, coaxing it a little. Then she was gone, in 3 gangling leaps, vanishing into the woods with no sound but one rotted branch, which broke with a sound like a track ref starter gun. I sat there looking mesmerized at the spot where she had been, until the actual sound of the freight came up through the stillness. Then I skidded back down the bank to where the others were sleeping. The freight's slow, loud passage woke them up, yawning and scratching. There was some funny, nervous talk about the case of the screaming ghost, as Chris called it, but not as much as you might imagine. In daylight it seemed more foolish than interesting, almost embarrassing, best forgotten. It was on the tip of my tongue to tell them about the deer, but I ended up not doing it. That was one thing I kept to myself. I've never spoken or written of it until just now, today. And I have to tell you that it seems a lesser thing written down, damn near inconsequential. But for me it was the best part of that trip, the cleanest part, and it was a moment I found myself returning to, almost helplessly, when there was trouble in my life. My first day in the bush in Vietnam, and this fellow walked into the clearing where we were with his hand over his nose. And when he took his hand away, there was no nose there because it had been shot off. The time the doctor told us our youngest son might be hydrocephalic. He turned out to just have an oversized head, thank God. The long, crazy weeks before my mother died, I would find my thoughts turning back to that morning, the scuffed suede of her ears, the white flash of her tail. But 800 million red Chinese don't give a shit, right? The most important things are the hardest to say, because words diminish them. It's hard to make strangers care about the good things in your life.